jobs. 4.4 million people filed for the first time for unemployment benefits in the week. And when you look at the last 5 weeks, more than 26 million people, 26.4 million people have gone to their state unemployment offices or websites and filed for the first time for jobless benefits. To put that into context, the pandemic has wiped away all of the jobs created, all the job gains since the Great Recession. And just in these past 5 weeks, some 16% of the labor market have filed for unemployment benefits. This is essentially a job market that is broken. This is what it looks like when you stay at home. You've got all these people losing their jobs and waiting in wait mode now to see what the next move will be and when the economy can start to reopen. The hope, of course, is that this is temporary, but we just don't know the next moves.
And so is that the unemployment rate right now? 16%, you're saying? And what's the historical context?
Would be elite. I mean, look, we clearly have an unemployment rate today that is the highest it's been since the Great Depression. This is far worse than the Great Recession. This is worse than 1982. No real playbook for it as well. I mean, there are some concerns that the economic figures aren't even capturing all the people who've been sidelined by this just yet.
I want to bring in Julia Chatterley, CNN anchor and correspondent, as well as CNN White House correspondent John Harwood. So, Julia, I mean, is it time to just reset our expectations? Because how are these numbers going to do anything but get worse until the economy can safely reopen?
It's a great question. This is the fear gauge now, I think, for the U.S. economy. These are jobs lost, furloughed, or people who are simply afraid for what the future looks like here. The expectation, I think, is that we've seen the worst in terms of the weekly numbers that we're talking about of people asking for help. But even now, on a weekly basis, we're still expecting these numbers to remain in the millions. And to your exact point, it's going to come down to a couple of things. When can we start feeling safe enough to reopen states and the nation's economy and get people back to work? And the other thing, of course, comes down to the lending program, the PPP. That was about saving jobs, saving small businesses on a daily basis. So we keep coming back to it, but getting money to those businesses will hopefully stem some of these claims because it will allow people to remain in their jobs. The success of that remains pivotal.
Yeah, I mean, God willing, it depends on how long this goes on. And John, that brings us to the argument, the political argument. And it's very hard to understand where President Trump is with this, because on some days he encourages people to be liberated and get back to work and encourages governors to reopen. And then yesterday he said something so curious during the press briefing where he claimed that he had said to Governor Brian Kemp of Georgia, who is reopening tomorrow, that he thought that President Trump claimed that he thought that that was a bad idea. So which one is it?
Allison, President Trump consistently bends under pressure, and sometimes the pressure is from his political base, which is anxious to get back to work, business owners, friends of his, people who resent what's happening in big cities if they live in small towns or rural areas, and other times it's from the public health professionals. And so even as we had the president shaming Robert Redfield of the CDC at his news conference yesterday, and reports about somebody removed from vaccine development because he dissed the president on hydroxychloroquine, you also had the president saying what he said about Governor Kemp. But I just wanted to add a little perspective to your earlier conversation with Christine. The highest recorded unemployment rate in the history of the United States is 25% during the Great Depression. It is likely now that our actual unemployment rate at this moment is around 20%. When you take those 26 million people who've been added to the rolls with those who were already unemployed before. What that is going to do is increase political pressure on a next round of relief after the one that the House is expected to pass this week. And it underscores just the extent of the economic catastrophe. Now, this isn't the Great Depression. It's a completely different thing. Some people call it a medically induced coma for the economy. But there is depression-level suffering right now in the economy, which is going to put the onus on both the Fed, which has stepped up in a very fulsome way, as well as Congress to keep going, since we can borrow money at extremely affordable rates right now.
And so, Christine, I know that none of us have seen anything like this in our lifetime, and you don't have a crystal ball. But if the economy can't open, as we keep hearing from the models, until at best late May, June, July, are we going to see numbers like this, like the ones we're seeing today, every week?
Well, I mean, I think I agree with Julia that maybe the peak has been put in for the worst weekly numbers, but you're going to see just pain every week if you don't have the money flowing. And that's why the Fed and why Congress are working so hard to get that money flowing. We're still in the very early moments of getting that stimulus money, that bailout relief to Main Street, right? And that money is going to start to flow. These enhanced unemployment benefits, those will start to flow as well in the days and weeks ahead. The most important thing here now, honestly, is government support for the economy. Ironically, at the beginning of this political cycle, the government involvement in the economy was the worst thing you could be talking about. And now everyone's talking about how involved the government's going to have to be in the economy just so that you can stem the pain from these numbers. Every one of these numbers is a person who is now very anxious and has bills to pay and a family. That is really the core of this.
Julia, what's the timeline for those next monies to flow?
And this is such a critical point because we've seen this government now agree, and hopefully today we'll sign off on the next package, $2.5 trillion plus worth of support. The problem is, when you look at individual states like our reporting on Florida, just 15% of the people that have actually successfully filed for benefits and money here have actually got the cash in their hands. When we look at small businesses, there was a survey this week. LendingTree said just 5% of successful small businesses have their hands on the cash. It's that transition mechanism that's so crucial here, and millions of people are still waiting.
Okay, Julia, Christine, John, thank you all very much for helping us understand this breaking news on the jobless claims.